Johnny. Johnny is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We'll make up a new place that he's at each 10 minutes. But we're excited. We're excited to do the podcast today. We as talked about before, we will be early in the show discussing some bachelor talk. It was 2 hours of our lives that we really appreciated. Really glad we took the time of our days out to do that. We'll be talking some current events, and then obviously got to go episodes 9 and 10, the end of the Last Dance 10-part documentary. That was awesome. But first we'll go with our opening comments, and Sean, we'll start with you, man.
What's going on, man? It's good to be back in the studio over here. I've gotten to the point where I'm getting out of the house about twice a week now. So
Nice.
this last weekend, took a trip out to the river with some good friends and family. That was fun. And then really enjoyable. Yesterday actually was the first time I worked out a high school athlete since the start of Corona. So that was really fun. Made a little bit of change. Would have done it for free. But that was fun. It took all of 20 minutes for him to throw up
Nice.
into the workout. So
Nice.
it'd be interesting to see what happens when you got the whole team back in the gym. But that's about it on my end, man.
Yeah, JB. You got an interesting opening take.
It's getting a little bit less awful each day now. So
Yeah.
I'm actually
great.
I'm actually worried about that.
Optimistic, JB.
Yeah,
This guy's new.
slow down, Speed Racer. But it's no, man. I guess gyms have now opened up. Bars are set to open in a few days, and so two of the mainstays of my routine are coming back. I don't know how fast I'll be in either one of those, but they're coming back. But yeah, man, good overall, and better and better each day, I guess. So not too bad.
Yeah, I'm normally more along your lines, JB, of being patient and waiting for the first line. But I will admit, I was the first day gyms were open. I was back in there, and it just felt really good to get some sense of normalcy. Like Sean said, just to get out of the house was really good. And then my opening little story right here is it's gonna be real quick. Trying to stay positive is just wanted to shout out another podcast. Dr. Rhonda Patrick is one of the leading scientists in her field, and she dabbles mostly in nutrition and health, and but she's went a little bit into the coronavirus, just doing some research on it. And one of the things that she was talking about a lot was the importance of vitamin D and how that's contributed, and the importance of it if you're not outside more, which a lot of people are staying inside and hunkering down, so they're not getting that, take supplements and stuff. And she was just talking about immunity, and talking about how important, how good the sauna is for you. So a couple little things on there. So just wanted to share some of that, a little nugget of that. So get outside a little bit, get a sweat on, and it'll help your overall health and wellness. So JB, I'm gonna throw the initial conversation to you, man. What are we starting with today?
Well, you remember that optimistic JB? He's gone now.
I remember him.
Yeah, he's gone.
He's a
now.
good guy.
Yeah, R.I.P. Yeah, I mean, our as far as comings and goings in our great nation, the third inspector general has been fired in 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks' time, we've fired 3 inspectors general. There's been 4 fired by the Trump administration just this year. So, and those are all stemming from ongoing investigations into either his family or people in the administration. And it's kind of like you want to be that optimistic, JB, but then you wake up and read stuff like this every morning, and it kind of makes you think, is there any sort of like doubt over whether it's just blatant corruption? So it doesn't matter whether what party you identify with, or whether you support the guy in general or not. It's like, if you look at that fact, and these are nonpartisan, just they're the office of the inspector general. They're supposed to be people finding wrongdoing, and you fire them. The latest one was fired illegally, actually. Like, they're supposed to give Congress 30 days notice before someone in that position is terminated or removed, and they didn't. And it's just like, at this point in 2020, like, no listener or viewer is going to be surprised. But at this point, that's not even top tier news. That's kind of, it's just it's lost in all of the ridiculousness. But for any other country looking at us, it's like, if you give them the facts, it's like, well, you first tell them what an inspector general is, but once you do, and then say, well, yeah, 3 of these guys have been fired in the last 6 weeks. In any other country on earth, that's blatant corruption, and people in developed countries and in free countries, people call that out as such. So yeah, that's what's been on my
Jess,
mind.
let me ask you a question, because I know I've been keeping up with this a little bit. Probably not as much as you have, but just to play devil's advocate, if you will, right? The number one thing that a Trump supporter is going to say is essentially that he does have the power. That is something that falls under his umbrella, or his scope of his job, is to remove inspector generals. So to those people, what would you tell them?
It'd be like when the Heat got their big 3 together. Not 1, not 2, not 3. Yeah, if you remove one person because you have a kind of a conflict of you kind of you're not sure if you agree with them on major issues or not, that's one thing. But then when you have people that are in your group that are under active investigation, and you remove them because that investigation displeases you, it's very hard. I feel like any rational person, even if there are any in that crowd, it's like, even if you're in the MAGA crowd, it's like, how do you look at those facts and just say, yeah, that's completely normal, and that happens in a democracy, that happens. But 4 in this year, 3 in the last 6 weeks, I think it's kind of unprecedented, and it gets brushed to the side. But man, it just to me, you can't really call it anything other than blatant corruption.
Yeah.
Sean, what are your thoughts on some of the dangers of that?
Well, I think just from a constitutional aspect, I'm trying to always look at this both ways, just to kind of get a better understanding of both sides and both takes. And I think from what I've heard from the experts and past inspector generals, people that have actually had this job before, is that Trump is like Justin said, he's setting a dangerous precedent to remove these bipartisan positions without any sort of rhyme or reason or cause at all. He's not giving any sort of reason to Congress, and so that's kind of where I'm kind of sitting on the whole thing. To me, it's one of those things of, just because you can do it, it doesn't mean that you should do it. And we're seeing a president that is just, I'm not going to say it's a clear abuse of authority yet, but it's definitely, if you don't raise an eyebrow to it, then you're kind of not really following and paying attention.
I'm saying if this was a movie, right? Like if this chain of events was a movie, and the villain that's in power or whatever, if they start to fire people around them because their crew's being investigated, it's like, it's not a mystery. You wouldn't be surprised in that storyline if it was a movie.
The last investigation was it was Secretary Pompeo, right?
Yeah.
Abusing resources. I think this is making people walk his dogs,
Yep.
and among other things.
Yeah.
And then also it was a Saudi Arabian arms sale as well, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's, I mean, the political climate that we're in now is automatically, if you bring up those things, it's automatically going to be deflected and say, well, what about what Obama did? What about
exactly what they're saying.
and
in
it's
2009 that he's fired a inspector general.
Well, it's like, he fired one, and it was not because he was inspecting him or inspecting people close to it. He was fired, sure, but it's just like, that's always what gets brought up, and it's like, well, I'm talking about now. I'm talking about the president now, and it's 10 times worse than what you're referencing. But like I said, in any other era, in any other time, maybe in any other year, this is front page news, and this is kind of a big deal that stirs people up and gets people protesting. But in 2020, good luck. But,
Yeah.
no.
Let's move next to something I know JB's kind of an interesting little sub take on this, but reopening of the country. Thoughts on that, Chris? Sean, I'm sorry, we were just with Chris Dial. Shout out Chris Dial.
Shout out Chris.
But Sean, what are your thoughts on the process of opening the country, man?
Every day when I'm not on the road every day, but when I am, it seems like there's more and more people coming out of their house. And so to me, we're at the point where it's not, if we open up, but when we open up. Like, it's going to happen, despite whatever the numbers or science or, whatever political side that you tend to lean towards. The country is going to open up. And I'm kind of torn in the middle. I think it would just be inconsiderate, at the very least, to not consider those vulnerable populations. And so I think just for my own side, I'm going to take reasonable caution. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be locked up in my house all the time, but I'm also not saying when bars open up on Friday that I'm going to be standing in line to get into a bar. I think people in general have this overwhelming sense of like missing out when you don't go somewhere. Like, how many times have you gone out to a bar and at the end of the night you're like, well, that was pretty shitty and insignificant? Like,
Never.
that's
Never.
probably that's probably what's gonna happen. The first night you go out, a lot of people are gonna go out and be like, yeah, I feel it. Well, that was kind of just pointless. So you're
Not
not
true.
gonna find me. You're not gonna find me.
You mean
being-
it's not the time of your life every time you go out?
Okay, well, probably because I'm hanging out with you bastards
Probably
all the
that's
time.
probably-
No, it's
Yeah.
not. Because
It's actually
those are the times you're not hanging out with
That's
us.
a big reason.
JB?
Man,
Or-
yeah, I
or
mean,
do you want to rescript it?
No,
did you-
no. I have a similar, I guess, a similar approach to Sean, and to me, where I'm torn is like you have to kind of merge idealism with realism sometimes, and it's like, well, in an ideal world, everyone gets that the potential that this virus has and all those things, and that the government, in a perfect world, the government takes care of its tax-paying citizens, but we don't live in that world. And so when you look at the fact that the government, I mean, they've already shot down the next proposed stimulus, right? So there isn't much more aid coming to individual working Americans. So like maybe if you're a farmer or if you own a business or something like that, maybe so. But like if you're an hourly worker, if you're a regular everyday working American, there's not much relief in sight. So if that's the way things are going to be, those people have to go back to work so they don't starve, and so their kids have clothes on their back.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like what Sean said. It's like
Yeah.
you have to kind of be mindful, and hopefully businesses stick by. I don't, in Texas, I don't have very much faith of business like bars and restaurants sticking by that 25%
Right.
stuff, and I also don't have very much faith in the authorities in enforcing that. Like, I don't think there's going to be cops on every corner. I don't. They can't be, and they won't be. But I don't think they're going to be policing the bars and restaurants like that. So. Then that kind of brings me to my thing is that an interesting whataboutism is like what if the
Let me stop you
Yeah.
there because let's go. Let's keep it on this. I do want to get to that. I
Yeah.
do want to get to that. I'm gonna because I want to stay on this a little bit. Is I want to give you my a little bit recent changes on this and tell me what you guys think on this. Please feel free to disagree. Johnny somewhere is a little bit happy that I'm moving more towards that. that what are your thoughts on just allowing the choice, that allowing people to make, like allowing the freedoms of, if people want to stay because they feel like it's, or you have someone that I think that's what the government should be for those type of people to that if they're at risk to try and help them. And then those that want to go out and maybe there is more of a risk, but I think this has been overblown. I think that, we talked about this a little bit, that I don't think it quite hit the numbers in the fact that, we talked about the average death of the coronavirus is older than the average death of people in America. Talking about the numbers that it's hit, talking about that, I think in some ways we were trying to do the right thing. This is good because if something ever happens that it's affecting people at a greater number at a greater death rate. And I think we kind of figured out the kinks of it. I think there's a big problem. I was listening to a couple different medical, podcasts, trying to, listen and get information. There's a huge conflict of interest for those groups because a lot of the minor surgeries, a lot of the minor things people aren't going to right now out of fear of being at a hospital, feeling that's the wrong place. So these hospitals are losing money. But if when someone dies, they say it's a coronavirus related death, they're going to get a $1,300 from the government. So they were unintentionally incentivized to elevate the amount of coronavirus deaths it's documented by some of these healthcare workers that in order to not fire their radiologist, they had to elevate some numbers a little bit. So I think it's an interesting conversation at the very least. And I'm leaning more and more towards the reopening, identifying numbers, increased testing. That seems like it's the number one thing. Increased testing. The countries that have gone past this, they have tests for people and they can identify who's the most at risk and leave them at home. If you're sick, stay home. I think
What do you
is
think,
kind of the
Sean?
in between.
Well, I'll say where I guess where I'm kind of turned off by it and where my walls and my defense kind of comes up is from the president's initial take on it.
Right.
When he initially disregards this as a hoax, when he personally harbors suspicion on expert knowledge in favor of his own repeatedly, that's where we tend to err on the side of caution. And so I don't think that it's unreasonable for the caution that's been exercised at this point. I do like what you're saying. Like in the event that it is something that is even more serious, it's nice to have already almost kind of gone through things. But for people to say that you're living in fear, I'm tired of hearing the right constantly say, "Oh, if you don't want to go home, you're just living in fear." To me, it doesn't add up. Like, I will say that maybe I could be a little bit blinded by the fact that our president, in my opinion, is an imbecile. But at the same time, I think if you're being cautious, I don't think that that's something that you can spin it and just say, well, you're just living in fear. That's kind of where I draw the line on the reopening, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, man, it's like if somebody stays home because they're legitimately worried, like they're legitimately worried whether they're high risk or not, and they're taking this seriously because they know people that have died, they've seen that people have died from it, whatever. How do you reconcile telling them, okay, well, if you're scared, stay at home? Well, they've got bills to pay, and those, unfortunately, because of the system that we live in, those bills won't. The government's not going to save you. No one's going to save you, and so it's like they're put in a really, really hard situation. So it's like when
my counter to that though would be, I mean, I don't think we're arguing here. I think we're just discussing, but what is letting other people go back to work affect any more negatively that person would be like? And I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. I just think we're to the point now where, and to me, this kind of speaks more to not even the handling of it, whether what are the individual constitutional rights that we have as individuals that should people not have the individual right to put themselves at risk? I mean, is that not some level of, and then they also, but I agree with you that this is where our government is so flawed. If someone wants to protect their family and their loved ones, there should be a safety net for them to be able to not starve. I agree with you on a lot of ways, but just playing also devil's advocate a little bit on what we're talking about.
No, and that's I try not to bring it up every episode, but it's like it's my most recent international experience. But it's like Sweden, months and months ago is getting, in the last few years is being painted by the right in America as it's like, oh man, it's just a hellhole it's been ruined by immigration. It's like, well, that's not true. But it's been now with Corona, it's like now Sweden is being championed as like, man, they had the right approach. They never fully shut down. Look at them. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're not, the people saying that don't know shit about Europe, and they don't know shit about European politics or political or social systems. And it's like in Sweden, they're encouraging people to work from home. And if you do not go to work, there's a safety net for that. It's a taxpayer funded safety net. So it's not a handout. It's coming from taxes that you've paid. But it's like, if you feel uncomfortable or if you're worried about it, there's anxiety about it, you're not forced to go back into it. Whereas here, it's like if your state chooses to open up, like we talked about, I think last week and the week before, Texas Workforce Commission said basically, like, if your job opens up and you don't go back, like there is no unemployment for you.
To me, that's the more inherent problem, is the broken system. Like I think with a better system, we can go back to work, and it can be a more like, so I think that's where we all agree on that part. And then it's more of the processes of how we're doing this to move on. But JB, you had a little side thing off of that you were getting into, but I wanted to talk about this before we did.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and this actually doesn't, for me, this is truly really about as objective of a question or a what if scenario that you could pose, because to me, it doesn't reflect poorly or positively on either side. It just kind of, my question is, what if the balance of power was reversed? So like right now, the Republicans have the executive, they've got the chief executive, they got the president, and they have a majority in Congress, in the Senate. So they have the majority in the Senate. Democrats have the majority in the House. But ultimately, if you've got the president and you've got the Senate, there you go. So my question is, in a pandemic, if the balance of power is reversed, so if the Democrats have the presidency and they have a majority in the Senate, is their response to the pandemic the same? Is their recommendation for what to do and where we should go moving forward, is it the same that it is now? What do you think?
That is a great question. That clearly I don't have the answer off the top of my head. I don't think that there's going to be I don't see a Democratic president getting elected that is going to approach this health emergency completely disregarding science and calling it a hoax. Or that, at least that would be my wish. I don't label myself a Democrat, but I don't, I will support them in that regard, is that, they will lean on experts in science when the time is necessary. I think I'm looking at it that the difficult part to me is how do they handle the economic side of the situation?
For sure.
Because I don't think that they're necessarily going to be for a complete shutdown, an extended shutdown either.
So what you're saying is, I mean, no matter what our opinions are of either party, in no democratic power structure, if they have the majority, you're saying in no democratic world does someone like Mike Pence or Jared Kushner have any sort of say in a pandemic response or
Absolutely.
a pandemic.
I think when it comes to the relief package as well, I think that you would see more of a priority put on the people than on, if you look at that. If you look at that,
I disagree
package,
on that.
Ooh, saucy.
Maybe I'm saying what I hope would happen.
I agree with you in concept. Well, let me be short on this and I'll give my thing. I think the Republicans not having to be in power are much less likely of agreeing to sign something. It'd be much harder. The Democrats, I think, would be more willing to sign anything than the Republicans would be not in power. I think the Republicans would be much happier to sit and let things fall apart and blame the Democrats. So I agree with you that the Democrats might be more liberal and obviously would be more liberal in their package, but I think it'd be much, much harder to get a package passed if the Democrats were in the ruling side of it. But
and if they did that, then the Democrats would continue to run Congress and the presidency if they just sat on their hands and did nothing. What I was referring to is essentially the priority of the initial package is really dominant towards big business, to where the entire purpose of the second package is to reinvest back into those small businesses because they weren't helped enough the first time around. And so that to me,
you gotta help
issue.
those corporations first, Sean.
Exactly.
You gotta help those corporations.
It's not a handout if it's for those guys.
Unfortunately, I think the main things stay the same. I think, sadly, most of the Democrats would end up, being the ones trying to keep the economy afloat. Because I think winning the economy normally wins the presidency. And for most of the, and I just think the levers of governing would be the difference. I think like JB, you sit right in the head, like a Jared Kushner is not going to be on the board of the Democrat. Democrats are going to be a little more willing to believe in science.
The authorities that are listened to is different, but for me, I can't help but think it's like, okay, we're not talking about regular people here. We're not talking about people that are normally put at risk during a pandemic. So like, if we're talking about the Democratic leadership, and this isn't playing devil's advocate, this is just being objective. This is being objective. You're talking about people that have everything. They make six figures a year. They get insights that other people don't get. They're able to invest and quadruple and quintuple their wealth on a yearly basis. They're good, right? So if your job and the source of your wealth is for you to have political power and for you to have relevancy as a politician, if there's something like this, you're not going to feel the effects of that. Like you're probably not going to get coronavirus. And if you do, you're going to have the access to the best healthcare possible. If you're Nancy Pelosi, you have a $24,000 refrigerator. So you're good. So what made me think about this is it's like, people that aren't very educated and people that really aren't informed at all, it's easy for them to say, oh, well, yeah, the Democrats are politicizing this. And it's like, well, maybe it benefits them to do that. it's a common thing to say, well, the Democrats are politicizing this and they're trying to make Trump look bad. And it's like, well, to me, it's not absurd. I don't agree with those people, and make no mistake, I'm not siding with your orange guy there. But it's like those people do have something to benefit from the economy being down, and they do have something to benefit from criticisms of the handling of the pandemic.
Yeah, I will say that when it comes to Trump, the closing off, give him credit for, he is going to be the candidate that is going to close off our country to another before the next. Let's be honest. This is a guy's campaign who's ran on building up borders. So if that sounds like something that he's been able to hang his hat on all the time. And another thing, I will say this, I will give him credit. And I don't know if he did this because he wanted to build up a scapegoat, but not really going all in on that fight against governors and kind of putting it back on them. Hey, we're going to let governors and local governments decide for themselves. I think that was the smart move. I think that was the right move. Now, whether he did it because he's a genius in himself, or whether he did it because because it's it's a little bit of deflection is whatever. But I will give him credit for that move. I think that was important.
It's interesting. Some of that, I was listening to a couple of podcasts that were more liberal leaning, and they were saying that was going to be one of Trump's best things, that he's going to show up a lot stronger against China and Joe Biden.
They're more liberal leaning than this one.
They somehow are.
I need to get to work.
Maybe not more liberal than you, JB. But we're gonna move on to the next topic. JB, you wanted to give a brief discussion on Bernie Sanders before we move on to The Bachelor. Two very related
Bernie
topics.
Sanders update.
This is JB's Bernie Sanders sighting.
Let me tell you, Bernie, this might be the last time you're mentioned on this podcast.
Oh, wow.
It
Won't be true.
It might be.
Won't be true.
No, I couldn't help but notice, it's like on the internets, there's been a huge almost an exodus from, not from leftism or from the ideas that Bernie started. So it's like, to his credit, he's brought a lot of stuff up to the platform on the left that would have never been there without him, or wouldn't have been there for many years. So he's done a great job with that. But there's been a large exodus of Bernie supporters from politics in general, as far as 2020 goes, because of his support, his endorsement of Biden, his agreement to work with the PAC now, and urging people, to get behind a unity candidate. And a large part of his movement has just left, and it won't be coming back. And I can say that because I'm probably a part of it. But it's like, I guess all that talk about, Bernie's thing is a cult, and it's like, well, there's only one base that really turned, in American politics, like for major politicians, there's only one where their base actually turned on them for betraying some of those values and some of those things. And so for me, it's like, I'm not gonna trash Bernie, but it's just like, what I will do is build up the people that stood by principle and said, hey, thanks for everything, but this is where we draw the line. This is where we're out. And there's a lot of third party push, and people that are, talking about anything other than voting for Biden. But it's just, that stuck out to me, is that's I think the only following in American politics that's willing to do that, because nobody else's following is doing that. They fall in line and they do what they're told.
Was it more painful for you this time around, having already gone through it 2016 when he endorsed Hillary?
Yes. It was more painful this time around because I was actually, I donated a few times or whatever, but it also, that's minor. What for me it was, is that I felt like that after 2016, if you have to run as a Democrat, sure, but don't go back to them. Like, if this is really it, and we could talk all day long about the way that Biden ended up being the front runner, which is very controversial, and we won't get into that. But if you're beaten, then take a step back, and literally nobody in your camp would blame you if you didn't campaign for Biden, and if you didn't lift a goddamn finger to help him.
For sure.
But I would say probably two-thirds of like actual Bernie supporters that have any sense of idealism at all as bad as Trump is, it's hard to respect that, and it's really it's a I don't know. I'm conflicted, and I know a lot of other people are, and it's like that. It just comes to show you. It's like it's not that people were worshiping him or anything, but it just comes to show you need to be focused on platforms and not people.
Yeah, I have told y'all before on this podcast, I've never believed that a Biden presidency is going to beat Trump, and I never really believed that a Sanders would either. I think he was a little bit closer, a little bit further along than Biden would be. I think Biden's going to get destroyed when debates happen, however, in whatever fashion, whether they're virtual or in person. But what is your take? Like, would you have preferred to have seen Sanders kind of just take on a third-party platform, or just exit gracefully altogether? Like, what do you?
I mean, a graceful exit would have been fine, but to me, man, I don't think there will be. And they made some mistakes. I honestly, I don't have a problem with the tag Democratic Socialist. No one else really in the world does, other than people in America. But it's like, if you're about winning, and we talk about that a lot because we have a sports background, if you're about winning, you got to know your audience, you got to know your opponent, you got to know that stuff. That hurt them. And then, being not a slave, but just being dependent on the DNC for stuff. And it's just like, for everything that they've done against you and everything they've conspired against you, what's the problem? I mean, what's the problem? He's in his 70s.
He owes them nothing.
No, he doesn't owe them shit. And it's like, he's in his 70s. Like, he's not going to run again. It's like, burn it down and be the guy that, with the history books talk about, this is the guy that ushered in a third party, and this is the guy that ushered in a multi-party system to American democracy. Be that guy. Don't be the guy that stirs up your supporters, and we're talking about really big issues and changes in this country, and then you urge people to go vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah,
don't be that guy.
Me and my mother-in-law disagree on a lot of things, such as starting a family and stuff like that. But what we don't disagree on is she. I know she's on the record saying if she ever won like big time, like the lottery, that she would fund like a third-party movement in this country. I think that's the best.
Is that Louise?
Yeah, that's the best question to
Louise.
that answer. Yeah, like I don't give a shit about anything but just starting the revolution. Like I want to be there. I want to see it.
Speaking of revolution, on to the Bachelor.
Oh shit! By the way, before Dustin gets in, I want to preface this. You guys that were tuned in last week, this was Dustin's idea. He pitched it. He said it. He said we are going to watch The Bachelor. He'll tell you more details, but however well or not well this goes, just know that it's Dustin's brainchild and it's on him.
Yeah. I have my good ideas. I have my bads. About halfway through my Bachelor rewatch, this definitely fell into the bads. Struggled through this one mightily. So basically, guys, I wasn't even sure what the newest season was, so Sean had to correct me. Was a real
Season
real
24.
issue.
24
So yeah, we're on
shit. Are you
24th
serious?
season.
They do like 2 or 3 a year.
So we watched the first episode and we kind of went off like who our favorites were, who we thought would win. Borderline gagged a couple times. Some real high level TV there. So yeah, we're gonna break that down a little bit. So my first thought was one, we had a 4-time state champion basketball player. She was high on my list. So Madison from Auburn. Dad coaches at Auburn. Pretty interesting stuff. Great legs on her. She came in as a paper airplane. Really nice stuff. Guy. Don't know if y'all knew this. They only showed him in the airplane 52 times, but the guy was a pilot. It took me a while. I'm a really slow learner, but I figured it out on the 43rd time they talked about
he was
planes.
An ex-participant in the Bachelorette. Is that right?
Yeah. It's hard to pick those things up. There's real subtlety to this show, but I finally think I cracked the the Da Vinci Code on what he does and what his background
So
is.
you got a top 3, is that right?
I do have a top 3.
So you had Maddie.
Maddie's
Madeline, the hoop.
Maddie's my number 2.
Okay,
Gosh, actually, I'm gonna drop her number 3 last minute.
nice one.
Victoria Paul's got the.
God
Oof.
damn it,
sh-
Dustin.
she's
Are
got
we all here on her?
she's got the best package.
Are we
She's-
there?
She's,
Are we on the level?
We are. She's a nurse. She's an LSU Alexandria. She's you know she's in the South.
Shout out Louisiana.
I think like if you were putting together a 2K
The
ratings,
boot.
you got to say she's the best one. I mean, she's got
Does
she's
have
got
the
a lot of
highest 2K
a lot
rating.
of great qualities. My
Damn it.
one's gonna be a little different. She's my number 2.
Oh,
She's gonna be my number 2. She should be 1.
okay.
But there's this little gal that brings a lot of drama. She's from Tennessee. She seems like a real shit, but that's
She
my
is.
type. That's my style.
I hated her.
And I knew you would. And that's
I
that's
saw
why
him-
we've always been good going
I-
to the bars because we're not going to go
Yeah.
after the same people.
I saw him praying at dinner for the camera, and I was ugh.
Hannah Ann. She acts like she's so sweet, and she is the center of drama of everything. So Hannah Ann's my number 1. She's got a real flair for the dramatic. One could say she's almost like the LeBron of the show. You know, she's
Oh,
really
wow.
like she sees when the camera's on her. She really comes alive. I think there's going to be a lot of fights, but
The
you know,
reason
it's
why
just-
this is even better is because unless
I'm-
unless you guys lied to me, none of us have ever watched The Bachelor except for
I have
this
not.
episode.
Sean told me to watch 4 or 5 seasons, but other than that, he hadn't.
Let me just quickly, because you brought up what was her, Hannah Ann, right? One of
Yeah.
my notes on her is she reminded me of the crazy bitch from what's that Vince Vaughn, the Wedding Crashers?
Oh,
She reminds me of the
Oh.
crazy chick.
I
from
like
that
her too.
one. Yeah, she
The
knows
I
what
like
sister
her
in that.
too.
she knows what she wants. She's
Oh.
Yep.
going after it. She might grab you
Yep.
by the crotch.
she might be
I
a
don't
little
know.
crazy.
I'm not turning down that
So
crotch grab.
Sean, top 3. Hit us.
Yeah.
I didn't look, man.
Oh, come
Oh,
on. Damn it.
man.
The baddie on the show, and this is my complete shallow, is Sydney from Alabama, the mixed girl.
Bama.
Oh yeah, but
Bama.
I think when we're looking at the whole package, I couldn't.
I don't even know if she's the best mixed girl on the show. say
Victoria P, the Alexandria. Let's just go back to her. Just
I mean,
real
Paul's a
quick.
pretty short name. You don't have to shorten it.
I
You can
don't
just call her
remember
Victoria
what the hell
Paul.
it was. I didn't.
Victoria Paul.
I didn't.
She's a nurse.
Facebook
from
stalk all
Alexandria,
these
Sean.
People. The only Facebook stalked the girl from San Antonio just
Ah.
to see if we had mutual friends,
Nice
Hmm.
one.
and we did.
Is she on
Oh.
Facebook?
She's on Facebook. Yes.
You
Wow.
guys
Alright,
get
we'll
on
probably-
that.
Miss San Antonio.
We'll probably bring her on the show
Alaya.
next week. Right?
Absolutely.
She should have been a
Um,
guest tonight,
but
to be honest
but
with you.
but Nurse Victoria. So what I found out really quickly is that Peter, that's the bachelor, that's his
Mm.
name, right?
Does he fly planes?
He does.
Okay.
Yeah. Peter has a thing for crazy girls,
Mm.
and I think
Feel you, Peter.
I think Victoria is playing this sweet Southern gal.
And she's gonna fail.
But guys, I've lived in Louisiana for a little bit, and I know what that is, man.
dark times.
Oh yeah, you want a girl from, if you're into crazy girls, you want a girl from
Alexandria is a
Louisiana.
little different though, man.
It's a little bit, but it's only a little hop, skip, and a throw away from Lafayette.
It's not a
All
jump.
right,
Tells
all
That was
right.
a
me
hop,
everything I
skip,
need
and
to
a
know.
jump.
Well, check it out, man. I got
JB's list.
at,
Sean didn't have a list.
Sean,
Sean's
Sean is
unprepared.
unprepared.
F.
Didn't do my bachelor homework.
All right, man. At number 3,
Mhm.
I got Maddie, the basketball
Mhm.
player. Yeah, I mean,
On
this-
2 of the 3 lists, even though
despite-
there's only 2 lists.
despite her stupid antics with the paper plane
Yeah.
entry, I thought that
Yeah, it
was
was
dumb.
dumb.
I
It
thought that
was
was real dumb. Where do you even find that? But yeah, her just off of basketball bias and general
Frame.
Yeah, general frame. Yeah. Second place, we got to go Alexa.
Mm.
Yeah, she's
Mm.
an esthetician.
Mm.
Is that
But yeah, that-
Alexis or Alexa?
Alexa
Alexa.
from
I-
Chicago.
That cuts me a little deep there. We won't get into that. But yeah, she's that was it stuck out to me. She
She's just ripping of a JJ right off the bat. Just
yeah.
I thought she was birthing a child, and then
Oh no.
That's
Yeah.
the vagina wax.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's that
she's
one,
the-
yeah.
she's the waxer.
And actually, I mean, to be honest, in the intro, it was like meh. But then
Oh, yeah.
when she
I
got
like
she
her.
got chosen,
I
it's
like
just
her.
like, oh, okay, she's dressed up now. But yeah, I've got a
I mean, she's
got-
top 3 for me in like weekend getaways. Like I'm
oh,
definitely
shit.
she's definitely.
I got a soft spot. Like I said, But yeah,
Soft.
and then first place, obviously Victoria Paul.
Yeah,
Oof.
Victoria's
Give me a
great.
break. Like I'm not ever gonna watch another episode of The Bachelor again. But let me tell you, if this guy doesn't choose Victoria Paul, idiot. Like straight up.
What did y'all think of the girl that he had a history with?
Oh, he brought her
So,
back.
First,
oh.
no, wait, not that one. The one that he met.
That was
the one
on The
that-
Bachelor,
the
right?
law
the
firm
Bach-
one?
No, the one that he met in a hotel
Oh,
room.
that was really dumb.
the one that he had met before.
The show's dumb. Like
It's very
do you,
dumb.
when
The
you're
one
like,
the one that he met in the hotel, and then they had a date at the
Yeah,
could
so
you imagine the
stupid.
concept where like a third of the girls have already decided they like love him? Like, could you imagine in your own dating scheme if before your first meetup, the girl loves you?
I mean, he just
how
seems
big of
so,
how tough is that?
he seems so warm, and he just seems
Also,
so genuine.
hey,
and,
One thing I really liked, I charted at one point and I stopped. The amount of people that just want to be able to travel based off the fact that he flies, like the amount of those girls that came in their intro, like, "Hey, I'd really like to travel. He can fly me places." I'm like,
Doesn't work
okay,
like that.
this is great.
Hey,
This
what's
is
y'all's-
really good.
What's y'all's? Okay, look, put yourself in Peter's shoes, right?
right?
And these girls are doing, what is there, like 29 of them? I don't know, but they're doing their first take, right? You got
Mhm.
30 seconds to make an impression. What's your
Ooh.
immediate write-off where in the back of your mind you're like, there's no way in hell I'm keeping this bitch around? What does it got to be for you, man?
What do you think?
Man, I will be shallow here.
Nice.
There's
Now this
some
podcast
of those.
is going places.
A couple of those girls are nothing they could have done to not get a second opportunity. There was some lookers on there. A couple of them, like, gosh, it was the one that was terrible that like I literally had to close my eyes. I felt so bad for her when she was talking about like my naked or my bald. And then she goes pussy, and then cat. I'm just like, what the hell is?
I had to.
that-
Yeah, I
it
almost
was
had
terrible.
I almost had to quit, but I was trying to one up you. I was trying to one up you guys by just watching it and being the
Yeah.
first one to
Yeah,
watch it
you did
all.
that.
Yeah,
For me personally, being a city guy, like you guys have a little more country in you. If a girl walks up to me with a longhorn, I'm out. I don't
You're out of there?
want if I see a gigantic bull walking beside you, I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
So that would be my biggest one out of all that was like that was
Yeah.
a problem.
I just, yeah, man. That's a good question, Sean. I
But
don't even want to get into it.
my thing too
Oh,
though, like
yeah. Oh,
Sean,
yeah.
I didn't say I'm sleeping on them. I say it's not my
Shout
type.
out- shout out to all
I'm
the country
saying
girls.
though, my side note to that though is Victoria Paul. If she's the one taking the longhorn, then I'm gonna be
It's
okay with
different.
the
She
longhorn.
can ride the longhorn.
That's
and
right.
It doesn't matter.
That's right. That's right.
But, all right, check this out though. This is a fun one. What do you think the over under is on the number of times the word like was used in the show by the girls specifically? Do you think? And I'm talking
94.
I'm talking
be my
about in this
guess.
episode.
So like
I'm
you're
thinking-
talking about
Like, don't you think like
when they say the word
Like when I'm talking,
Okay.
like when I say
as
you
the
know,
placeholder
like-
between thoughts?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like as a instead of an or a or just a pause or not saying anything,
Yeah.
a like. How many times do you think that was used? What do you think the over
per
under is?
episode? Because
No, no,
we
no,
watched 3 hours of this thing.
I think it's just this episode that we'll never ever get into again. But
Hopefully.
this intro episode with all the girls making their pitches and stuff, how many times do you think the word like is used?
97.
I
That's
just
pretty
said
good,
that.
dude.
Did you really?
What? I'm you guys are soft, man. I'm thinking I was gonna go 135.
Idiot.
I had an over under question, but it was how many how many does Peter hook up with?
Oh,
That's the real question
oh.
right there.
Oh, that was another
comment.
favorite. That was another favorite
comment
part.
for
Is
me.
that he's like
I don't wanna guess
he
that.
makes out with like 8 of them,
It's 29 contestants.
and dude says, dude was like, I wasn't expecting to feel it with them this soon, you know? Like, come on, bro. Like what?
He's so
Yeah.
subtle. He's so subtle.
The one girl's a flight attendant that doesn't like flying. Thought that was really impressive career option
Very,
choice.
very
I'm
awesome.
like, hey, I don't like flying. I'm a flight attendant. Also, flight attendant, very popular job. I don't know if you guys knew this. This is deep research.
Oh,
The guy's
shit.
a pilot. Guy's a
Yeah.
pilot.
He is a pilot.
Yeah.
Now, I thought the inclusion, and as we, delve further into this, like, I thought the fact that he brought the X, not even the X, the girl.
That's a
from the
power
other-
play.
That was
That's a power play.
that's a power play, and
That's putting everybody on check right here.
honestly, I felt like I feel like that's a tactic, and I'm never gonna
Oh,
know
yeah.
because I'm not gonna ever watch any of the rest of that. But I don't think he's choosing that
He's saying
chick.
that a whole lot. He's being very defensive about watching it.
Yeah, it's the third time.
God.
That's the
As
third time.
JB has recorded
but it puts-
episode 2 and 3.
It puts the rest of them on blast.
It
It's like, hey,
does.
I just eliminated 3 or 4 of you, but I'm adding
It's
the
inviting the
girl.
ex to the barbecue.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like saying, hey,
yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
you better have your stuff together.
It raises the stakes.
To me,
does.
first of all, it was weird watching this because like my girlfriend Maddie was in the garage working out, and I'm
Shout out,
watching
Maddie.
I'm watching The Bachelor on the couch. Like,
so a typical Sunday for you
yeah,
guys.
just cuddled up with my dogs and
Hey,
shit. Right?
Maddie's in there just pumping iron, and
Oh,
Sean's
yeah,
in there
he's-
being just
he's
the
getting it,
worst.
man. And but whenever he brought back the ex, I was like, this is truly a show for everyone. This is the
Except
hopeless
us.
the
Yeah.
hopeless
I
romantics.
say not for
You got
everyone.
the people that still believe that they're gonna work things out with their ex. You got people that are just in it for the sex, probably.
Oh
right?
yeah.
So I kind of get it now. I kind of understand.
Yeah, man. I just when I mentally checked out many times, but I watched it all. But I when I saw women crying on the first episode, like when I saw them going into the back crying on the first episode,
You're
I
not
said,
getting a rose from me.
I said,
You're crying
I
and
said,
shit.
listen, if you show this footage to that guy, I gotta withhold. If you showed it to me, I'm withholding
out.
the rose. I'm withholding the rose straight up, just because you're crying on the first episode. I can't deal with that.
I'm out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm out.
Speaking of, so, you know, us being out of this, it was painful. We got through it. It was a struggle. What we needed at the time, but we didn't have it. We need CBD oil.
That's right.
When you need CBD oil, Sean, you go to Natural Heights, man. You can't get there yet? Call the number 210-592-1060. Okay, you don't have a phone. You got a car, Sean?
I do.
1880 Nacogdoches Road. Drive your ass over there and get you some. I mean, what are you doing?
No excuses.
I guess not.
Honestly, Sean,
Get your CBD, Sean.
honestly, Sean, your podcast has been. Just go do it now. We're fine. We'll do the rest. But hey, go to Natural Heights. Get your CBD oil, people. All right, and then while you're getting that, before you leave to go to your, like and share this. Like and share.
We're serious about that. Like and share it.
Like and share it.
Just do it.
Just like and share it.
Thanks.
Get it all in a bag. Pile it up. Like it and share it. All right, MJ Doc.
Oof, fine.
Oh man,
I'm so disappointed this is our last one.
It's over now.
Do you want to just rewatch 1 and 2 next week and just keep it going, and then we'll just keep it on
I
that?
thought we were gonna go season 23 of The Bachelor.
Yeah. Terrible. Never again.
Yeah, good.
Ladies that
Really
enjoy
nice.
that at all,
Yeah.
that's all you
I'm
get.
sorry. That's on me. That's on
Yeah.
me.
Last Dance.
Yeah.
It's really over.
Thoughts on 9 and 10?
Favorite? What was y'all's favorite part, man? Mine was
I have one.
Rodman
Oh
doing
my
the
gosh.
DX to the crowd. after
Dude,
The
Rodman-
DX to the crowd after they won was awesome because he's in Salt Lake City, which is known for being very vanilla
Rodman's so lame.
in appearance, but very hostile with, like, even to this day, like anytime there's an incident like with fans and stuff, it's usually at the Jazz. We won't talk about why. But yeah, they win, and then Rodman gives the crowd just to suck it. Just boom.
The fact that
was
y'all
hila-
like
that was-
Rodman in any way, look, I know, and I
he's
know,
a legend.
I know and respect these two guys. They're professionals in their craft, working in basketball. You know, JB, you made a lot of money, you know, playing basketball. You would hate having him as a teammate. Doesn't show up. You're practicing, busting your ass.
I'm kind of gonna
Like-
be pissed at that, but also if he helped,
He's a gamer. I
he-
get
if
it,
he
but
helps
what
us-
could he have done if he just committed? Like, I get it. Does Rodman get a pass because he plays with Michael Jordan? Yes.
Yeah.
Rodman doesn't maximize his career. Like, I don't think you can.
Well, I think Rodman
fills
with the
his
Bull-
role.
Rodman
He
with
fills his role.
yeah, Rodman with the Bulls does. That's not a guy that's maximized his career, but like
He fills his role.
he feels it. But I mean, with Detroit and San Antonio, that's a guy that you could say. I don't know. Do you say that did he ever really grow? Did he ever really grow as a player? Did he ever add a skill set, or was he always just the same guy?
I
di-
think
he
by
didn't
some
need to.
point he decided that he did. He could have, though. He could have been so much more.
That is
Like,
a good thing, though. I don't know how I would react with him as a teammate. Like if you're looked at to be the leader of your team, and it's just like I don't know how you even approach a guy like that. I've played with some odd ones for sure, some odd personalities and some guys you have to get through to in a different way. But I don't know if any of them compare to Dennis Rodman.
it's just hard. I mean, the reason I think we all you have to come out of this and at least somewhat just loving MJ's realness. you have to in some way see just the built up fake as hell life that Rodman, like, fucking WWE. Are you kidding me?
During
Like,
the finals.
are
That,
you-
I didn't. I
between-
actually
after
didn't know
a
that.
loss.
I actually didn't know that before the documentary. I knew that he did the NWO thing and
I
the
hate
wrestling
it.
thing.
I'm
I
starting.
didn't know it was during the finals.
I hate it.
I'm
man.
starting to think that Dustin got benched in high school for a non-skilled player like Rodman, just a freak
I got benched in
rebounder.
high school off many people. that's not what it is.
But-
my favorite with and Rodman, I just hate him. I love that. You probably just did that but my favorite of the whole thing was that little 10-15 minutes of Steve Kerr.
Oh man,
Steve Kerr is
that was good.
Steve Kerr,
was
since
very
like the age
good.
of like 12, he was like a guy my size. Like I could kind of like, all right, I always wanted to try and like just be like him. I was such a big fan. He's such an outspoken dude in the NBA right now. Like I just love him. He's one of my favorite NBA people. But that story about him and his family and his dad in
It was
Beirut,
really- it was really cool.
it was amazing. So that was my favorite part of maybe the whole series
For-
outside of MJ.
For me, it was what we talked about. I guess it was in 7 and 8. It was the conclusion of 7, I suppose. The last 2 minutes or so where.
Is that when he's tearing up?
Yeah.
that's
That
really
for
good.
for
That was
me
really
for
good.
me, he kind of teared up at Kobe's thing, and a few other the other times with the memes of him crying. But it's just like you don't get to see people like that vulnerable very often, and that last 2 minutes where he's talking about the criticism that he had as how he led the team and how he was as a teammate when he was just like, hey, that's how I played the game. If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. And then he's like, break. And dude's crying and stuff. And it was just like that for me, that was probably the highlight. But overall, really cool series. And really, I'm thankful that it existed for the last 5 weeks because
Same.
the sports world needed it.
My biggest takeaway from everything, I mean, Jordan's greatness, I think people forget about, but we talked about this, before the podcast, the idea that a champion doesn't get dethroned. Like people in a boardroom end up eliminating their chance of, he goes out this way, and maybe for the storybooks, it seems cooler, but what a loss for the game of basketball that MJ doesn't get a chance to four-peat, that MJ doesn't get a chance under what circumstances in basketball do you not choose Michael Jeffrey Jordan and Phil Jackson over some GM? Like how mundane and simple of a task is that to pick the greatest player of all time?
To me, it falls on Reinsdorf because it's like if you're the owner, you have the ultimate say, and it's like if you're choosing this hobbit of a GM over the possibilities of being the greatest franchise that's ever existed. Like, I mean, the Bulls are still widely regarded as that dynasty in NBA history, but it's just like, man, if they go 7 or 8 with guys going 1-year contracts and stuff, it's just like you're telling me you chose the intellect or the emotions rather of Jerry Krause over those guys. How does that team just break apart? Like one of my earliest like memories as a kid, like being into basketball, they were at book fairs. They were selling little books of the Bulls, like the 97, 98 Bulls. And it had a whole page dedicated to every player from Jordan to the bottom. And it was just like that team in 97, 98 is larger than life. And it's like, you let that walk away because it's like, okay, if guys are old, don't ink them to a 6-year deal. Like Supermaxes weren't even a thing back then. It's like, don't ink them to that. Let it ride and see if they can do it again.
Well, MJ seems like such a fair source because he allows himself to be seen as a terrible teammate at times, to be kind of an asshole. Like when he says, when he is one of the realest that we've ever seen.
Transparent as hell, man.
So I mean, when he says he's going to play for you, I think you can take that to the bank. And just think about the 2 finals that we might have lost. Let's say they get to the finals one of these 2 times. We either lose the opportunity to watch him play against Tim Duncan and David Robinson, which that's a huge loss. But I think the more historical one is think about the opportunity to see Kobe Bryant and Shaq versus Scottie and Michael Jordan in the 2001 finals, and think about the historic value of that.
It would have been
in the microcosms
unparalleled.
of
I don't think
basketball.
you ever have. I don't think you have a heavyweight finals matchup like that
Yeah.
anywhere else in the history of the league.
My final thoughts on the deal is kind of like how MJ's, he kind of, to me, he puts all arguments at rest as far as being the GOAT. But like in the context of these docuseries, like, where does that fall as one of the greatest sports documentaries of our time? You know what I'm saying? And I think it's kind of similar to be said with his leadership. We said, well, this winning has a price. Like, not a lot of his teammates are happy about the docuseries.
I was gonna bring that up, and it's like at the end of the day, the victors get to write history.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And
but
so
it's like,
to me, he's kind of setting the standard again. Even post career, 20 years done or whatever, he's still setting the standards in sports and entertainment.
Well,
today.
and Woj just said today, he said that he thinks the timing of it is not a coincidence because he agreed for them to make it after LeBron won in 2016
during
and
the parade.
And he felt like maybe it's because somebody was challenging the throne and it's just like, at the moment, that sets the standard for sports documentaries, I think, because it not only is it huge, I mean, it's 10 parts, it's 10 hours of your life. But what Sean said is just like, I've heard a ton of guys or even teammates and guys that are featured in it unhappy with the way that they're portrayed. And to me, the only one, Horace Grant's already been on one of ESPN's affiliates talking about, that he's not happy with being painted as the snitch for that book.
Right.
But with Scotty's thing, it's like, man, what else can you say? It's like, that's something that happened. That's something that's well documented. You might be unhappy that you refusing to go into a game or whatever is checked in. And so it's like, you might not be happy with Michael's opinion, but that happened. And anybody that's a part of a team anywhere in the country would probably agree with Michael on that over you, that you fucked up.
Yeah.
But I mean, not everybody's happy, but it's like at the end of the day, victors write the history, and that's probably the best victor that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Do we, is one of those teams that gets lost because of the MJ greatness thing? I forgot, like that Pacers team is tough.
Oh yeah.
Like that's a bad team,
dude. I was watching that with my dad, and I looked over to him. I said, "Man, that Pacers team was fucking good. Like you had like Reggie, like Reggie, Mark Jackson, Chris Mullin, the Davis brothers, and
Jalen Rose
and Rick Smits.
That's a tough team.
And Travis Best. It's like I would argue that they're actually way deeper, deeper than the Bulls.
Yeah, that's to me.
So when
that's
Reggie
one of the
says
best teams they beat,
when Reggie first said that. And was like, well, I feel like we had the better team. At first, you want to think like, oh yeah, bitch, like sure you did. Like you're playing against Jordan, and it's like, well, maybe other than MJ and Scotty, maybe you did.
That was a hell of a team. I loved the Reggie part. I loved, that I'm gonna end Jordan. I'm gonna retire Jordan. Like I love. Reggie's always been one of my favorite players.
Pound for pound, the most arrogant. Like
Dude,
pound for pound,
I love it.
And for an NBA legend, like he still thought so much higher of himself. Like
he's the Hannah Ann of basketball, man. Like the swagger, but he needs it. He has to have it. I just love Reggie, man. Like he's going like, I'm gonna retire him, and it was such good stuff. MJ's a real one on this. My last little thing on this part was I have to show love to Scotty. I mean, we rewatched this game 6. Scotty, I mean, you guys understand this way better than most, that playing with a seized up back in a finals game, I mean, and he ended up playing 30 minutes that game. Yeah. I mean, people want to call that dude soft.
I think he scored like 12 points.
He did, man. And he rebounded. He took a couple charges. Man, I was just so amazed at him. Like he comes back in, and we watched this a couple weeks ago. They're treading water. They're losing until he comes back, and he kind of gives them the life that I think he slept on, and sometimes doesn't get the respect he deserves, man. But I love Scottie Pippen. I like him even more out of this documentary.
I was gonna say, if he has a negative view of it because of the Knicks game or whatever, that's fine. But overall,
did he not like this?
That's what I've heard. That's what I've read. Yeah, but ultimately, to me, he should still be a Last Dance fan because it wakes people up that didn't already know it, how how big of a deal he was and how special he was. And it's like, man, if you put him on any of the other teams in the league, that's a top tier superstar. He just happened to play with the superstar.
Well, MJ Doc, we're gonna miss you. We might just make up 11 and 12. We might make our own Wizards series. Might rewatch a Wizards game next week. Who knows? We might try and just keep the Michael Jordan history. But JB, you had another documentary that you kind of wanted to talk about.
Well, yeah,
I'll shit on it in a second, so I'll let you go, and then we'll.
Well, yeah. Now that Last Dance is over, I think we're being blessed with another. There's another one coming out about Donald Sterling and the Los Angeles Clippers, and the infamous trading of hands of that team because of some comments that he,
what year was that? 12?
2012 maybe. 12? Yeah. It's man, that seems like a long time ago. So for those that don't know, Donald Sterling, like many other owners of professional sports teams, this might come as a surprise, but old rich white guy basically has a girlfriend, as they're also prone to have. Has a girlfriend who is of African American descent. Something happens. She exposes a phone call between the two of them, where he's upset that she's brought another African American friend to the game, and they have courtside seats, obviously, and his expression of disdain for that kind of mushrooms, and it results in him selling the team to who is that? I feel bad for not knowing his name. He basically helps run Google.
Man, I can't remember.
Yeah, we'll get back to it. But yeah, it forces his sale of the Clippers. And so the documentary is going to have, interviews with Doc Rivers and with players and with stuff like that. And so it's interesting. I think that'll give us some more ammo until sports.
Chris Paul makes a comment in the trailer, almost suggesting that they were legitimately considering not playing. And I'm interested to see, well, how far are those claims going to be made? Because I don't see it's in a playoff series. Like I don't see the Clippers in the year where they were at their peak. Like this is prime time Lob City Clippers. I don't see that team not playing. Like, would it have been a statement? Absolutely, for sure. But saying it and doing it are two-way different things, man.
My problem with this documentary and in general sports documentaries that you mentioned the name is that you look at executive producers and who else is on it but Chris Paul. Like I don't love a guy that is saying that those players were the heroes of the story and he gets to have, and I love LeBron, but LeBron does this too. LeBron and Chris Paul become the writers of their own press clippings. And I just think it's bullshit journalism.
Was Matt Barnes on that team?
He was.
I'd like to hear his take.
And he's a real one.
I will trust.
Me too.
Shout out to all the smoke, by the way. But
it's a great show.
Oh my, yeah, one of the best podcasts.
Matt Barnes is so well spoken.
No. Honestly, man,
he's so good.
Honestly, I would believe Matt Barnes' take on
me too
on that.
But I think I want Chris Paul's take. I don't want him to have control over cuts, and like I just want someone who's non-biased to not necessarily I just think like the slant of, and even the MJ part's tough because MJ's boys are executive producers, but MJ's such a real one that and I think there's things that get removed from that. But I hate the point we're at in sports where the players feel they have a need to just. If you want that to happen, let there be truth in it. Let it not be a docuseries about how great you are. Let someone evaluate the
Steve Ballmer. That's who it is.
Steve Ballmer. Yep.
That's the owner. But yeah, I know. I hear what you're saying. It's like we would like it if it was just an independent filmmaker that maybe isn't even in the basketball world that is in charge of getting these takes. And
somebody would stick on that story. I mean, it's a good story.
It's great. Yeah. It's like don't get me wrong. I'm still gonna watch it. It just you always have to. It's going to be like if someone makes it, same thing with our politics. If someone makes a story and their people are on the thing, you're like, oh, I'm guessing this is going to slant towards you. Like that's a simple, I don't want slant. I want to know what happened. I want to know what both sides felt, who was in the right, who was in the wrong. And I think that takes away from it a little bit whenever one part of this is producing it.
And I think, what the reason why this is interesting to me and to us, I think, is that nobody's going to argue that like Donald Sterling is a good dude.
No.
But what will be argued is that should someone be coerced, or should someone be almost forced into selling an not just up and coming, but now profitable franchise
Correct. Yeah.
in the top basketball league in the world? Should you be pressured into that because of opinions expressed in a phone call that was illegally obtained? And,
very
yeah,
dangerous.
yeah.
It's
So
very dangerous.
That's the thing. No one's
Do
going to
the-
argue that he's a dick.
do the
but-
ends justify the means,
Right. Right.
essentially? And that's going to be interesting because
Yeah.
the last I remember about it is like it's up to all the executives in the NBA. Like if they're trying to get rid of somebody that's detrimental to
Yeah.
the value of the league.
Yeah.
But
And I'm pretty sure that they have that clause where I forget what the wording of it, because I did a deep dive on this. It's been a while ago but they have a clause where it's like protecting the shield, essentially, like that they can do that. So legally they're in the rights, but it's just going down a slippery slope. Whenever, what if a dude slips up, makes a mistake, but to a large part of the population, that's a correct statement. Like who's in charge of morality? That case wasn't so complex. That was one where I think you can agree,
It's
but
like
I
a
do.
home run, but,
Yes.
but and it's like, does it? It doesn't really run down the chain of command like when Mark Jackson was removed. So it's
Right.
it is a slippery slope, and that's why the docuseries is interesting. That's why I'll tune in and check it out. But
Me too.
the last thing that I wanted to get you guys' takes on before we
I'm
check
good.
out
I'm
is
good with anything but Paul Pierce news. What's up?
shit.
What do you got?
Yeah, well, against your wishes, Paul
kidding, I'm
Paul
kidding.
Pierce.
F you, Paul Pierce.
Paul Pierce was, I think he was on with Jay Williams, Jalen Rose, and somebody else, and kind of gave his top 5. And I feel like that. I mean, these are tough times for sports broadcasting. So it's like, I think they kind
Especially
of,
Paul Pierce's.
yeah, for sure. I think they kind of knew that he was gonna say what he said, or maybe he geared it that way to be controversial and get his name in the news. But like, he gave his top 5 NBA players of all time, and LeBron wasn't in it.
Of course he was.
And it's like his top 5, if I recall correctly, it's like Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Then he said, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, and Kobe Bryant. And everybody on the panel seemed kind of dumbfounded, and it's just like,
As it should be.
well,
Who was the person that ended that Celtics run?
that's LeBron.
Oh, okay. I wonder if
Well,
there's
yeah.
any
Just destroyed them.
murked you, Paul.
people say a lot of dumb shit. Some people think
Yeah,
that
Sean
Klay
talks on
Thompson is a
this.
franchise player. But like, just can we just let
Fucking
LeBron?
stupid.
Yeah, can we just let LeBron? Like
This is-
LeBron was watching this the same way everybody else was. Like, man, like that's his idol, that's his inspiration. Like, cut the dude some slack. Like, it's not always about him. Like, I don't understand this attack on LeBron. Is he in your top 5 or not? Don't really give a damn. He certainly should be, but
But
if
it's
he's
just
not. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just absurd though for somebody that played against him and that was personally destroyed by him.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit wacky to me that you say, but Bill Russell's better, or that Magic was
Yeah.
better, and it's like, man, is this the rings? Is this the rings committee, or is this are we talking top players? And to me, I'm not going to argue if somebody says, hey, I got to take Jordan and Kareem right now. It's like, well, LeBron's not done playing, so I'm okay with that. But whenever you start to say that Magic was better, whenever you start to say that, whenever you start to put those other guys above
I'm not
him,
about
I
it.
can't
Not
I
about it.
can't I can't get on board with that shit,
Here's my
man.
Paul Pierce thing. Paul Pierce is just a media clown. He's taken the Skip Bayless style of just saying wild, crazy bullshit and getting shares.
What if they start a show together?
They should, and hopefully it gets.
Shout out to Skip Bayless for being
canceled.
the worst, by the way.
You're both the worst. And the shitty thing is Skip Bayless has to, because he's fucking nobody. He's trash. He has to do
They
it.
left him out. They left him
He's a
out of
joke.
Last Dance, and supposedly
Good.
he was there. He was one of the main
Good.
like Chicago writers at the time that left his ass out.
He should get blackballed. No one put him into anything. That's perfect. But Paul Pierce was a dude. Paul Pierce didn't have to be a clown. Paul
No.
Pierce is a guy that earned other basketball people's respect. He went up against the baddest dudes. He had that
And-
comparable Reggie Miller confidence.
Yeah. And now he's
And now he's a clown.
Now he's sullying his.
It's just
his-
shit.
he's
It's
sullying
terrible.
Himself. Dustin feels strongly about this. if you
I
guys haven't
hate him.
noticed.
I hate Paul Pierce. The problem is, man, I just respected the hell out of his game.
He's too ball dominant for you, right?
No, he just he needs to shut the fuck up. That's what he needs to do. He needs to either be honest about his takes. Like all he's trying to do is just try and get people to be shocked by what he says. Like that's all he cares about. It's not about telling the truth. It's about
So,
what is the
shock
craziest
factor.
thing I can say.
What's gonna get me invited back on this show?
God, man, I'm like, you know what might get you back on the show because you're a borderline top 50 player of all time. You know, that might be enough.
Should be enough. Yeah.
Like
Should be.
just be because you're great.
And that you're more fun than Jalen.
Yeah,
you know?
you
that
have
should
a
be- that should be
personality.
enough.
Just say what you think. You know, like you don't have to do that. You're not the Skip Bayless. And I hate that I've said his name twice, but Skip's nobody. He sucks.
I saw a picture of him like posing with like a Jordan long sleeve and like
Oh,
Jordan
God.
like retros, and I was
Oh,
just like,
God.
man, when he goes to the mall, like he buys that bitch out of youth smalls and women's size 6s. Like he buys out the store in the size
Skip
6
is,
shoes and the youth smalls.
Skip is the guy in open runs like at LA Fitness that wears a Jordan jersey that no one fucking picks up.
Arms,
Yeah.
leg sleeve,
Yeah.
leg sleeve.
Yeah.
All right.
And then ends up a captain of the next
No,
team.
absolutely. He always has next. JB, send us out, man.
Well, guys, again, if you love us, well, if you even remotely like us, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff.
Just do it already.
Yeah. But yeah, if you are go, just try to be nice to other people, even if it's from a distance. But try not to be awful. So you don't even have to go that far outside your comfort zone. Just try to not be awful and not shout in other people's faces that may or may not disagree with you. Just try to be good to each other, and yeah, tune in next week because Crazy Johnny will be back, and we'll try to have some more good stuff for you, minus the Bachelor.
Klay Thompson top 5, but not 5.
Goddamn.